Hey there. So the big question, what is structural integration? And it is a really big question. Not to sound kind of flippant, but I don't know if any of us really know what it truly is. It is such a big question, but I'll give it a shot. For me, it definitely comes back to the works of Ida Rolf and her original development and creation of structural integration. And there are many branches now, but I believe that there are a few things in common. With structural integration, we know that it is specialized. We know that it is a specialized form of bodywork. We used to think that it was very much primarily tied to fascial manipulation, but we now know that that is not the whole thing. And in fact, I think we're still discovering exactly how this particular specialized form of bodywork actually affects the person, affects the body. So we know that much. We know that we're not stretching, manipulating, tearing away at fascia. And one of the big things that I believe is a tenet of SI, structural integration, is that it is a series of bodywork sessions. It's a series of bodywork sessions that's done in a particular way, in a particular order, that works particular territory with every session. And this particular series of sessions is unlike any other type of series work, mainly because there is a certain philosophy tied to this series. And I think that is really what stands out with structural integration, and that is the philosophy behind it. There are certain principles, there are certain rules, there are certain ways of thinking that come with SI, come with structural integration. Sometimes I'll hear people say, someone taught me Rolfing techniques. And that actually doesn't really exist. There is no such thing as a Rolfing technique. I don't believe that there is such thing as a structural integration technique. It is a system. It is a system of principles and philosophy. So when you say that it's a technique, it's not really a technique. So when it comes to SI, when it comes to structural integration, the principles and the philosophy, I think, are what really make it stand apart. And there is one particular philosophy, one particular principle that really makes it SI, in my opinion, and that's the concept of adaptive capacity. And adaptive capacity really kind of looks at the person as a whole. That's where one of the other kind of big things, stand-alone things, kind of makes SI. We look at things from a whole body perspective, a whole picture perspective, and you've heard that before. And some people will even bring up the upper cross syndrome as an example of SI, but that really isn't an example of SI. Instead, it's an example of upper cross syndrome and what Dr. Janda put together. Adaptive capacity really starts to look at the person as a whole. You start to kind of body read the person as a whole, and you start to think, well, if someone is having an issue or some sort of chronic issue in one area, then how can we look at the person as a whole and possibly work somewhere else to affect the area in question, or the area in issue? And that's one of the things that structural integration does really well. It looks at the person as a whole. One of the things that I believe is a great and healthy side effect of SI is pain relief. And pain relief isn't necessarily a goal of SI, but I've seen it become a healthy benefit, a healthy side effect. At least that's how it's practiced in my practice. That's how I teach it in the Morales method. So, to me, pain relief is almost like a non-goal when it comes to structural integration. Lots of rules with regards to structural integration, and Ida Rolf put together a set of rules. In the Morales method, we have changed them just a little bit, tweaked them just a little bit. The rules that we have that govern the way that we work are the rules of adaptability, adaptive capacity, support, mobility, education, and closure. So similar to the ones that Ida Rolf developed. And these are the things that really kind of make SI. I mentioned before the principle of adaptive capacity. And, another thing with regards to that principle is that once a modality, I believe that once a modality starts to become a system and starts to look at the person as a whole and brings in that principle of adaptive capacity, then that system starts to become like structural integration. Another thing is that structural integration is really interesting in the sense that because it's not isolated to a set of techniques, it's not necessarily a modality, then it has the capacity to bring in techniques from other modalities. So it has the capacity to use techniques from other modalities and bring them into their own. One of my structural integration teachers once said, in a nice way, that structural integrators, structural integration practitioners are pirates, and it's true in a sense. We do bring in things that can work. Whatever we see that works on the outside world, we bring it in, we integrate it with our set of principles, and we use it when we deem necessary. We leave out what isn't necessary, and eventually we also bring in our own essence, our own personality as we work with our clients, as one human works with another human. If those sets of philosophies or thoughts seem familiar to you, that's because I did not make them up. One of my big influences was Bruce Lee, and he would talk about how he put together his system, Jeet Kune Do, by bringing in what worked, leaving out what didn't work for him, and adding in his own personal essence. And I believe that structural integration follows that same mode of thought. One of the big questions that people ask with regards to structural integration is that, yes, we know that it's a form of bodywork, but does it have to be painful? And it does have this reputation for being very intense form of bodywork and being painful. And what I like to tell people is, is it intense? Can it be intense? Possibly. One of the main goals of structural integration is to help with unlocking chronic patterns of pain or chronic patterns that may be related to pain. It can also deal with improving the quality of posture, and it can also help with having the client discover a different way of being in their body. And all of those things can lead to some level of intensity, but it doesn't have to be painful for pain's sake. These goals aren't meant to elicit pain. And it can be painful, it can be intense, but we definitely don't need the client to have to experience pain. So, what I tell my clients is to let me know once they're at a certain level of discomfort, because once we reach a certain level of discomfort, then we start to see diminishing returns. We start to see the work not being productive. So structural integration as a whole definitely doesn't have to be painful. Sometimes it can reach a certain level of intensity, but like I said, it doesn't have to be painful. I did mention those 3 goals, and I think those goals are really great to have, are really great to keep, but I don't believe that they define structural integration. I don't think that that describing how SI can work is actually what it truly is. I think that you can best describe SI not only in what it is, but what people receive from it. What are the benefits that they get from it. So, in a sense, describing SI is really about describing people's experience behind structural integration. And many have described, relief from pain, and have described an improvement in posture, and have also, talked about this kind of emotional component of where they have experienced a whole different set of being, kind of being in the new shell, a new way of being in their body. So, that to me is another way to describe SI. It's almost like you have to combine all of these things to really get a sense, to start getting a picture of what structural integration really is. So there you have it, folks. Try to put it together in a nutshell as best I could. Structural integration being a specialized form of bodywork that works at the body and looks at the body as a whole system, and has a set of principles and philosophy behind it. And it has the ability to integrate other modalities into itself to create a very holistic and very whole body approach. I hope this helps. I will be putting other videos together to talk about the differences between MASI, the Morales Method Academy of SI, and other SI systems. Alrighty, so thanks for watching, folks, and if you have any questions, feel free to ask, and that's it. Thanks. Bye.